Hey everyone, I here to guide you today. If you use this video to drift off to sleep, please tap like, hit subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now get comfortable and relax. My name is Rachel Adams. I'm writing this from a motel room in Ocala, Florida, 3 days after we left the National Forest. My hands still shake when I think about what happened, and I've replayed every moment so many times that I'm not sure what's real anymore. But I need to get this down while the details are fresh before I start convincing myself it was something else, something normal. David and I had been together for 4 years when we decided to take the RV trip. We'd bought the RV 6 months earlier, a 2018 Winnebago that David found on Craigslist for a price that seemed too good to pass up. The previous owner was an elderly man whose wife had passed, and he said he couldn't bear to use it anymore. David joked that it was probably haunted, but we laughed it off. We were practical people. We didn't believe in ghosts. The trip to Ocala National Forest was supposed to be a reset for us. We'd been arguing more than usual. Stupid things mostly. Money stress, work stress, the usual erosion that happens when two people live together long enough. David worked in IT and was always on call, always checking his phone. I was finishing my master's thesis in environmental science, and the deadline pressure was making me impossible to live with. We thought a week in nature, just the two of us, would help. We arrived at the Juniper Springs campground on a Tuesday afternoon in late September. The site we'd reserved was decent, a pull-through spot with hookups, surrounded by dense Florida scrub forest. The air smelled like pine and damp earth. Other RVs dotted the campground, maybe a dozen total, spread out enough that you could pretend you were alone if you wanted to. David backed the RV into the spot on his first try, which he was proud of. I remember that specifically because I teased him about it later when things were still normal, when we could still tease each other. The first 2 days were exactly what we needed. We hiked the nature trails, swam in the spring, read books in the shade of the awning. David even put his phone away for hours at a time. We cooked meals on the propane stove and played cards at the little dinette table. I started to relax. My shoulders, which had been practically living up near my ears for months, finally dropped. On Thursday evening, the weather changed. The sky took on that greenish-yellow tint that means something bad is coming. We secured everything outside, brought in the chairs and the little grill, and battened down the RV. The forest got very quiet, that absence of sound that happens before a storm like the world is holding its breath. The lightning started around 8 p.m., not the distant rumbling kind, but the type that cracks right overhead and makes you flinch. David and I sat at the dinette, watching through the windows as the storm rolled through. Rain hammered the roof, so loud we had to raise our voices to hear each other. "Should we worry about flooding?" I asked. David shook his head. "We're on high enough ground, and these things built for this." The lights flickered twice, then went out. The whole campground went dark. No more electric lights from other RVs. No bathroom building lit up in the distance. Just blackness and the occasional white flash of lightning that turned everything into a photographic negative. We found the flashlights and lit a few candles. David broke out the battery-powered radio, but all we got was static on every station. The storm must have been interfering with the signal. It lasted maybe 2 hours. By 10 p.m., the rain had stopped, though we could still hear thunder in the distance, moving east. David and I went to bed not long after, both exhausted from the tension of watching the storm. I woke up around 2 in the morning to complete silence, the kind of silence that feels wrong, like it's pressing on your eardrums. I lay there in the dark, listening to David breathe beside me, and I tried to figure out what had woken me. Then I heard it. "Rachel." My name called from outside. A woman's voice, distant but clear. I sat up, my heart already pounding. David was still asleep. I waited, thinking maybe I'd imagined it, or maybe it was someone from another campsite who needed help. "Rachel, are you there?" The voice was closer now, and it sounded familiar, though I couldn't place it right away. I got out of bed and moved to the window above the dinette, careful not to wake David. I pulled back the curtain and looked out. Nothing. Just darkness and the vague shapes of trees. No flashlights, no movement, But the voice came again, from a different direction this time. "Rachel, I need to talk to you." That's when I realized who it sounded like. My sister, Claire. But Claire was in Boston. Claire hadn't been in Florida in 5 years. I stood there, gripping the curtain, telling myself it was someone else. A stranger who happened to sound like her. Maybe another camper playing a prank, though that seemed unlikely at 2 in the morning after a storm. "David," I whispered, going back to the bedroom. I shook his shoulder. "David, wake up." He mumbled something and rolled over. "David." Louder now. "Someone's outside calling my name." That got him up. He fumbled for his phone on the nightstand, no signal of course, and grabbed the flashlight. "What do you mean? Someone's calling your name?" "Just listen." We both stood still in the darkness. After a minute, the voice came again. "Rachel, can you hear me?" David's expression changed. He heard it too. He moved past me to the door, unlocked it, and pushed it open. The beam of his flashlight cut through the darkness outside. "Hello," he called. "Is someone there? Do you need help?" No answer. The forest was utterly silent again. Even the usual night sounds, crickets, frogs, whatever else lived out there, were absent. David stepped out onto the metal steps, shining the flashlight in a slow arc. I followed, standing in the doorway. The air was thick and humid, that post-storm heaviness that makes your clothes stick to your skin. "I don't see anyone," David said. "I heard it," I insisted. "You heard it too." "I heard something. Maybe someone's lost out there or hurt." It sounded like my sister. He looked back at me. "Your sister's in Boston." "I know where my sister is, David. I'm saying it sounded like her." We stood there for another few minutes listening. Nothing. Eventually, David came back inside and locked the door. Probably just someone who wandered away from their campsite and got disoriented. Sound carries weird in forests, especially after storms. It made sense. I wanted it to make sense. We went back to bed, but I didn't sleep. I kept waiting to hear my name again. It didn't come. The next morning, everything looked normal. Wet, but normal. Branches and pine needles littered the campground. A few other campers were out surveying minor damage. A collapsed tent here, a blown-over canopy there. David and I walked to the camp host's office to report the power outage and ask if anyone else had gotten lost during the storm. The camp host, a weathered man in his 60s named Tom, shook his head. Nobody reported missing. Power should be back on by afternoon. They're working on the lines now. He studied us. "You folks doing all right?" "Fine," David said. "Just wanted to check." As we walked back to our site, I saw the couple from the RV 2 spots down. They were elderly, maybe in their 70s, and I'd seen them a few times over the past few days but never talked to them. The woman was sitting in a camping chair staring at the forest. Not reading, not doing anything, just staring. "Morning," I said as we passed. She turned to look at me, and something about her expression made me stop. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. "Did you hear it?" she asked. "Hear what?" "The voices, last night, after the storm." My stomach dropped. "What voices?" "My husband's voice, but he was right there beside me in the RV. I heard him calling for me from the woods, but he was asleep in bed." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. I thought I was losing my mind. David and I exchanged glances. "We heard something too," I said slowly. "My name, but it sounded like someone I know." The woman's husband emerged from their RV then, carrying a cup of coffee. "Nancy, you bothering these young folks with your stories?" "It's not stories, Harold. You heard them too. You heard your mother." Harold's expression darkened. "My mother's been dead for 15 years, Nancy." "I know that. But we both heard her." We made polite excuses and left them to their argument. Back at our RV, David was quiet. "What are you thinking, Oh?" I asked. "I'm thinking that storms do weird things to people's heads. Make them hear things that aren't there, or..." He paused. "Or there's some kind of acoustic phenomenon we don't understand. Sound bouncing off trees, creating echoes." That's not what an echo sounds like. Rachel, what's the alternative? That something in the woods is mimicking voices? When he put it like that, it sounded ridiculous. I dropped it. The power came back on around 3 that afternoon, just like Tom had said. Everything returned to normal or close to it. We went for a walk on one of the trails, ate dinner, watched the sunset. Neither of us mentioned the voices. But that night, they came back. I heard David's voice first this time. I was washing dishes at the little sink when I heard him call my name from outside. I turned, looking toward the bedroom where he'd gone to lie down 15 minutes earlier. "David," I called. "Yeah?" His voice came from the bedroom, groggy. He'd fallen asleep. But I'd just heard him outside. I was sure of it. I dried my hands and went to the door, opened it. "David, were you just out here?" "What? No, I was sleeping." I stepped outside. The sun had set about an hour ago, and the campground was in that twilight phase where everything was blue and gray. I could see the glow of lights from other RVs, hear the murmur of conversation and the occasional laugh. "Rachel." David's voice again, from the trees to my left. "Come here." I froze. Because David was still inside the RV, I could hear him moving around now, getting out of bed. "Rachel, I need to show you something." The voice was patient, calm, exactly how David sounded when he was trying to convince me of something. David appeared in the doorway behind me. "What's wrong?" "Do you hear that?" I whispered. We both listened. The voice came again, from deeper in the forest now. "Rachel, you need to see this." David's face went pale. "That's not me." "I know." "Rachel, please, it's important." There was something hypnotic about it. The voice sounded so much like David that my brain kept insisting it must be him, even though he was standing right there. Part of me wanted to follow it, to see what it wanted to show me. David grabbed my arm. "Get inside. Now." We went back in and locked the door. For a long time, we just sat there at the dinette, not speaking. The voice continued for maybe 20 minutes, alternating between calling my name and calling David's name, though when it called his name, it used my voice. "We need to leave," I said finally. "It's dark. We can't navigate these roads at night, especially not in this thing." He meant the RV. "We'll leave first thing tomorrow morning." "What if it doesn't stop?" "Then we go sit in the car with the doors locked until sunrise." But the voices did stop eventually. Around midnight, the forest went silent again. We stayed up the whole night anyway, drinking instant coffee and jumping at every small sound. At dawn, we started packing up. We were hauling in the awning when Nancy from the neighboring RV approached us. She looked like she hadn't slept either. "You're leaving?" she asked. "Yeah," David said. Something came up. "It was worse last night, wasn't it?" She lowered her voice. "Harold won't talk about it, but I know he heard it too. His brother calling to him. His brother died in Vietnam." I glanced at David. "Did anyone else hear anything?" "I don't know, nobody's talking about it, but look around." I did. 3 RVs had already left. I could see the empty spots where they'd been, and at least 2 other campsites were in the process of packing up. "Whatever this is," Nancy said, "it started with that storm. Something changed." "Things don't just change," David said, but he sounded uncertain. Nancy gave him a pitying look. "You're young. You still think the world makes sense." We finished packing and were ready to go by 8 a.m. David started the engine, and I was about to get in when I realized I'd left my phone charger plugged in at the back of the RV. I went to unplug it, and that's when I saw her. A little girl, maybe 7 or 8, standing at the edge of the tree line. She was wearing a yellow dress that looked wrong somehow, too bright, too clean. She was watching our RV with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "David," I called. "David, there's a kid." He came around from the driver's side. "What kid?" I pointed, but when I looked back, she was gone. Just empty forest. I saw a little girl, right there. Maybe she wandered over from another site. Maybe. But I didn't believe it. The expression on that child's face hadn't been curious or lost. It had been hungry. We pulled out of the campground 10 minutes later. I kept watching the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the girl following us. But there was nothing. Just trees and shadows and the occasional flash of other RVs between the foliage. We made it about 30 miles before the RV started making a grinding sound. David pulled over at a rest stop, and we spent the next 2 hours dealing with what the mechanic said was a transmission issue. Probably got debris in it during the storm, the mechanic said. Happens sometimes. I can patch it enough to get you to a real shop, but you're going to want to take it easy. By the time we got back on the road, it was early afternoon. We'd planned to drive straight through to our apartment in Gainesville, about an hour and a half away. But the RV was limping now, and David didn't want to push it. There's a state park about 20 minutes ahead, he said. We can stay there tonight, get an early start tomorrow. I don't want to stay in another campground. It's not a campground. It's a state park with RV parking. We'll be fine. The RV needs rest, and so do we. I didn't argue. I was exhausted, and the thought of dealing with a broken-down RV on the side of the highway was worse than one more night in the forest. The state park was smaller than Ocala, less developed. We found a spot in the RV lot, just a gravel rectangle with hookups, no trees or shade. There were only 2 other RVs there, both at the far end of the lot. It felt exposed, but after the oppressive closeness of the forest, I found it almost comforting. We spent the afternoon resting. David tried to call the insurance company about the RV repairs, but we kept losing signal. I dozed on the couch, jerking awake every time I started to drift too deep. In my half-dreams, I kept hearing voices calling my name. Dinner was quiet. We ate canned soup and crackers at the dinette, both of us too tired to talk much. The sun set, and we locked all the doors and windows even though it was still warm. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Around 9 p.m., David's phone rang. We both jumped. He grabbed it, checked the screen. "Unknown number," he said. "Don't answer it." But he was already pressing the answer button. "Hello?" I watched his face change. "Who is this?" He listened for a moment, then held the phone away from his ear. I could hear something. A voice, distant and crackling with static, but definitely a voice. "Is that?" I started to ask. David hung up. His hand was shaking. "It was your voice, calling me, saying my name over and over." "That's impossible, I'm right here." "I know that, Rachel, I fucking know that." The phone rang again. This time, David turned it off completely. We tried to act normal. We brushed our teeth, changed into pajamas, went through the motions of getting ready for bed. But neither of us got into the bed. We sat at the dinette, watching the windows, waiting. The voices started at 10. David. Rachel. David. Rachel. A loop, coming from somewhere outside. Both our voices, perfectly replicated, calling back and forth to each other. It sounded like a conversation, like 2 people looking for each other in the dark. "This isn't real," David said. "This isn't happening." "It's happening." "Then what is it? What's doing this?" "I don't know." The voices got louder, closer. I could hear footsteps now, too, crunching on the gravel outside. David grabbed his flashlight and went to the window, but when he shined it out, there was nothing there. "David." My voice right outside the door now. "Let me in. I'm scared." David looked at me. I stared back at him. "I'm here," I said. "That's not me." "Rachel, please, it's dark out here. Let me in." The door handle rattled. David moved fast, shoving his weight against the door. "Rachel, go to the bedroom, lock yourself in. I'm not leaving you." "Rachel, go." I went. I locked the bedroom door and wedged a chair under the handle for good measure. Through the thin walls, I could hear the thing outside. It had stopped using my voice. Now it was cycling through others. David's voice, my sister's voice, voices I didn't recognize. It was like listening to a radio scan through stations. Then I heard David scream. I yanked the chair away and threw open the bedroom door. David was on the floor by the dinette, clutching his arm. The RV door was open, wide open. "What happened? What's wrong?" "It touched me," he gasped. Something touched my arm through the window. I felt it. I slammed the door shut and locked it. David's arm had 3 long scratches, shallow but bleeding. I grabbed the first aid kit and cleaned them while he sat there staring at nothing. "We're leaving," I said. "Right now. I don't care if it's dark. We can't. The transmission—" "I don't care about the goddamn transmission, David. We're leaving." He looked at me then, really looked at me. "What if it follows us? Then it follows us. But we can't stay here." We threw our essential stuff into backpacks, phones, wallets, water bottles, left everything else. David turned on the RV engine, and I held my breath waiting for the grinding sound. It came, but the vehicle moved. We pulled out of the parking lot with the headlights cutting through the darkness, and I kept my eyes on the side mirrors, watching for movement. For the first few miles, everything seemed okay. Then the engine started making that sound again, worse than before. David was sweating, gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles were white. "Just a little farther," he muttered. "Just a little farther." We made it maybe 5 more miles before the RV shuddered and died. David tried to restart it, but nothing happened. We sat there on the side of the dark road, surrounded by forest, and I felt the last of my hope evaporate. "Pop the hood," I said. "Maybe I can see what's wrong." "You don't know anything about transmissions." "I know more than nothing." We got out. The night was thick and humid, full of insect sounds. I held the flashlight while David lifted the hood, but I knew we were wasting time. Neither of us knew enough to fix this. That's when I heard it. "Rachel?" "David?" My mother's voice. She'd been dead for 3 years. David heard it too. His head snapped up, and he looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Pure terror. "Mom?" I called back before I could stop myself. "Sweetie, I need your help. I'm lost." David grabbed my arm. "That's not your mother." I know it's not." But the voice was so perfect. Every inflection, every subtle tone. It was exactly how she'd sounded when I was a kid and she couldn't find me in a store. Patient concern wrapped in love. "Rachel, please. It's dark and I can't find my way." I started walking toward the voice. I couldn't help it. David tried to hold me back, but I shook him off. "Mom, where are you?" "Just a little farther, honey. I can see your light." I stepped into the tree line. The forest swallowed me immediately, the darkness so complete that my flashlight seemed to barely make a dent in it. Behind me, I heard David calling my name, but it sounded distant already. "Rachel, wait." I stopped. That was David's voice, his real voice, not the one from the forest. I turned around and I could just barely see him at the edge of the trees, his flashlight beam searching for me. "Rachel, come back." But ahead of me, deeper in the darkness, I heard my mother again. "Sweetie, you're so close. Just a little more." I stood there suspended between the two voices. The reasonable part of my brain was screaming at me to go back to David, to get to the road, to flag down a car. But the other part, the part that still missed my mother so much it hurt, wanted to keep going, wanted to see her one more time, even if it made no sense. "Rachel!" David's voice desperate now. I turned back toward him, took one step, then another. The forest behind me erupted with sound. Dozens of voices, all at once. My mother, my sister, David, my father, friends from college, people I hadn't thought about in years. They were all calling my name, begging me to come back, saying they needed me. I ran. Branches whipped my face. Roots grabbed at my feet, but I ran toward David's light. He met me at the tree line and pulled me back onto the road, and we stood there holding each other while the forest screamed at us with voices we knew. Eventually, the voices stopped. The forest went silent again except for the normal sounds of night insects and distant frogs. "We need to walk," David said. "Stay on the road. Keep moving until we find help." We started walking. We walked for what felt like hours, though it was probably only 30 or 40 minutes before we saw headlights coming toward us. David flagged down the car, a beat-up sedan with Louisiana plates, and the driver was willing to give us a ride to the next town. "Y'all look like you've seen a ghost," the driver said. He was an older black man with kind eyes and a gentle voice. "Something like that," I said. "This stretch of road's got a reputation," he said. "Folks say strange things happen here, especially after storms." "What kind of strange things?" He was quiet for a moment. "Voices, mostly. Things that sound like people you know, calling out from the woods. Been happening long as anyone can remember. Native folks used to say it was spirits trapped in the swamp. White folks say it's just the wind. Me, I don't know what it is. But I don't stop on this road after dark if I can help it." He dropped us off at a small motel in a town I'd never heard of. We paid for a room in cash, and the clerk didn't ask questions about why we looked like we'd been running through the woods. This was Florida. People probably showed up looking worse. The room was basic but clean. 2 beds, a TV that only got 3 channels, a bathroom with cracked tile. We locked the door and put the chain on, and only then did either of us breathe normally. "We need to call the police," and I said. "Report what happened." "And tell them what? That voices called us from the forest? That something touched my arm? They'll think we're on drugs." "Then what do? We sleep. Tomorrow we figure out how to get the RV towed and get back to our lives. We forget this happened." But we didn't sleep. We sat on our separate beds with the lights on, watching the door until the sun came up. David went to shower around 7 a.m. I heard the water start, heard him moving around in the bathroom. Then I heard the water shut off. "Rachel?" His voice came from the bathroom. "Can you bring me a towel? I forgot to grab one." I found a towel in the closet and walked to the bathroom door. It was slightly ajar. "David?" "I have the towel." No answer. I pushed the door open. The bathroom was empty. The shower was bone dry. The mirror had a thin film of dust on it, like nobody had used it in days. But I had heard the water. I had heard David. I backed away from the bathroom, the towel falling from my hands. That's when I heard the shower start again, this time from behind me. I spun around and David was standing there at the entrance to the bathroom, wet hair dripping, a towel wrapped around his waist. "What's wrong?" he asked. I thought you were already showering." "I just got in. You okay?" I looked at the bathroom behind him, then at the one I'd just left. They were the same room. Of course they were. There was only one bathroom. "Yeah," I said. "Sorry. I'm just tired." But I wasn't tired. I was terrified, because I knew what I'd heard, and I knew that bathroom had been empty. David got dressed, and we went to the motel office to ask about a tow truck. The clerk gave us a number, and we called. The tow company said they could get to our RV by early afternoon and tow it to a shop in Gainesville. It would cost us more than we wanted to spend, but we didn't have much choice. We walked to a diner across the street and ordered breakfast neither of us could eat. David kept checking his phone, even though there was nothing to check. I kept watching the other diners, looking for something wrong, something off. "We should call your sister," David said, "and my parents. Let them know we're okay." What would we tell them? I don't know. That we had RV trouble. That we'll be home soon. Do you think we'll be home soon? He looked at me across the table. What do you mean? I mean, do you think this is over? Whatever was happening back there, do you think we left it behind? Rachel, there's no it. There was some kind of, I don't know, mass hysteria or acoustic phenomenon or something. But we're 50 miles away now. We're fine. I wanted to believe him, but I kept thinking about that empty bathroom, about the voices that knew exactly who we were, who we loved, who we'd lost. We went back to the motel to wait for the tow truck. David turned on the TV and flipped through the channels while I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. A local news station was showing a story about the storm earlier that week, about the damage it had caused, the power outages, the flooding in some areas. Then the anchor said something that made me sit up. In related news, authorities are investigating the disappearance of a family of 4 from a campsite in Ocala National Forest. The family was last seen Tuesday evening before the storm hit. Their RV and personal belongings were found at the campsite, but there's no sign of the family members. Anyone with information is asked to... David turned off the TV. "That's not us," he said quietly. "I know. We're not disappeared. We're right here." "I know, David." But we looked at each other, and I could see that he was thinking the same thing I was. That family had been at the campground. They'd been there during the storm, just like us. They'd heard the voices, just like us. And now they were gone. The tow truck arrived around 2 p.m. We rode with the driver back to where we'd abandoned the RV, and the whole way I kept my eyes on the forest, looking for movement, for shapes that didn't belong. The RV was right where we'd left it. The hood was still up from when David had tried to check the engine. Everything looked normal. The driver hooked it up and started the tow. As we were pulling away, I looked back one more time. That's when I saw her, the little girl in the yellow dress, standing at the tree line. She raised one hand and waved. Her smile was too wide. I didn't say anything to David. What would I say? By the time I looked back again, she was gone. We got the RV to a shop in Gainesville. The mechanic took one look and whistled. "Transmission's completely shot," he said. "I've never seen one fail quite like this. It's like something corroded all the internal components at once." "Can you fix it?" David asked. "I can replace it, but it's going to cost you." We paid for a rental car and drove back to our apartment. It felt surreal walking through our front door, seeing our ordinary furniture and our ordinary kitchen and our ordinary life waiting for us like nothing had happened. That night, David suggested we order pizza and watch a movie, try to relax. I agreed, even though I knew I wouldn't be able to relax. We settled on the couch with a comedy neither of us had seen, and for a little while I almost believed everything was okay. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I looked at David. He shook his head. "Don't answer," but I was so tired of being afraid I answered. "Hello?" Silence. Then faintly, I heard it, my own voice calling from far away. "Rachel, Rachel, where are you? It's dark and I can't find my way." I hung up. David was watching me. "It was nothing," I said. "Wrong number." He nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe me. The movie played on, canned laughter filling our living room, but neither of us was watching anymore. That night, I woke up around 3 a.m. David's side of the bed was empty. I got up and found him standing at the living room window looking out at the street. "David, come back to bed." He didn't turn around. "Do you hear that?" I listened. At first, nothing. Then very faintly, I heard it. Voices calling from somewhere outside, not loud, not close, but there. "It's probably just someone walking home from a bar," I said. "Or neighbors." "Rachel." His voice was very quiet. "When did we get home?" "Yesterday, after we got the RV towed." "Are you sure?" "Of course I'm sure. What kind of question is that?" He finally turned to look at me, and his expression made my blood run cold. "I don't remember the drive. I remember getting in the rental car, and then... nothing. And now we're here." "You're just tired. You probably dozed off." "For 3 hours? Rachel, I don't remember any of it. It's like we skipped from point A to point C, and point B just isn't there." I tried to think back. The rental car, getting on the highway, driving home. But now that he'd said it, I couldn't picture any of it. I could remember deciding to rent the car. I could remember walking into our apartment. But the part in between was just blank. "We're tired," I said firmly. "We've been through a lot. Our memories are probably just fuzzy." "Fuzzy isn't the same as missing, Rachel." We stood there in the dark living room, and I realized I couldn't hear the voices anymore. The street outside was completely silent. Not even the usual city sounds. No cars, no distant sirens, nothing. "Come back to bed," I said again. "Please." He did, eventually. We lay there in the darkness, not touching, not speaking. I don't think either of us slept. In the morning, I called the RV shop to check on the repair estimate. The man who answered said they had no record of a Winnebago being towed in yesterday. "Are you sure?" I asked. It was around 2 p.m. A 2018 Winnebago with a shot transmission. "I'm looking at our records, ma'am. We didn't receive any RVs yesterday. You sure you have the right shop?" I hung up and told David. He pulled up the number we'd called for the tow truck. It didn't exist. The diner we'd eaten breakfast at. I searched for it on Google Maps. Nothing came up. "Maybe I'm misremembering the name," I said. "Or the location. Or maybe none of it happened," David said quietly. "Not the way we remember it." That doesn't make any sense. None of this makes any sense, Rachel, but here we are. For the next 3 days, we tried to pretend everything was normal. David went to work. I worked on my thesis. We cooked meals and watched TV and talked about mundane things. But there was a wrongness to everything now, a slight off-key quality that I couldn't shake. David started sleeping more. Not just at night, but during the day too. He'd fall asleep on the couch in the middle of a conversation, at the dinner table, and when I'd wake him up, he'd look at me like he didn't quite recognize me at first. The voices kept calling, but only at night and only when we were alone. Soft and distant, like echoes. Sometimes my voice, sometimes David's, sometimes other people we knew. We stopped answering phones. We stopped going out after dark. On the 4th day, I noticed David had a scratch on his arm. 3 parallel lines, faint but visible. "Where did that come from?" I asked. He looked at it like he'd never seen it before. "I don't know. Must have scratched it on something." But I knew those scratches. I'd seen them before. The night in the state park, when something had touched him through the window. "David," I said carefully, "when did you get those?" "I just told you I don't know. They weren't there yesterday. Then I got them today. What's the big deal?" He left the room. I stood there staring at the empty doorway, trying to remember if the scratches on David's arm that night had been on his left arm or his right. I couldn't remember. I should have remembered something like that. That evening, I suggested we go for a walk. Get out of the apartment. Get some fresh air. David agreed, and we headed out just before sunset. Our neighborhood is quiet, tree-lined, safe. We've walked these streets 100 times, but that evening, everything looked wrong. The houses seemed too far apart. The trees leaned at odd angles, and there was nobody else outside. No joggers, no dog walkers, no kids playing in yards. "Where is everyone?" I asked. David didn't answer. He'd stopped walking and was staring at something ahead of us. I followed his gaze and saw her, the little girl in the yellow dress. She was standing at the end of the block, watching us. "David, let's go back." "That's the girl you saw, isn't it? At the campground." "I think so." "She's here." His voice was flat. She followed us home. The girl took a step toward us, then another. Her smile grew wider with each step. We ran. We ran back to our apartment and locked the door and closed all the curtains. David checked every window, every door, making sure everything was secure. When he was satisfied, he sat down on the couch and put his head in his hands. "This isn't real," he said. "None of this is real." "David, we never left the campground, Rachel. We never made it out. We're still there in the forest, and this is... I don't know what this is. A dream. A hallucination. But it's not real." I wanted to argue with him. I wanted to say, of course it was real. We were sitting in our apartment. We were safe. But I couldn't. Because part of me had been thinking the same thing. "Then what do we do?" I asked. "I don't know." That night, David disappeared. I woke up around midnight and he was gone. His side of the bed was cold, like he'd been gone for hours. I searched the whole apartment, the bathroom, the kitchen, the closets, even places too small for a person to fit. He wasn't there. I called his phone. It rang from the nightstand. He'd left it behind. I called his friends, his parents, anyone I could think of. Nobody had heard from him. I should have called the police, but I didn't, because I knew what had taken him and the police couldn't help with that. Instead, I got dressed and got in my car. I drove back toward Ocala, though I wasn't sure I'd be able to find the right place. The roads all looked the same in the dark, but I found it. Or it found me. The campground appeared around a bend, and I pulled into the parking lot. Tom's office was dark, no other RVs in sight. The place looked abandoned, but I knew it wasn't. I grabbed a flashlight from my car and walked into the forest. "David!" I called. "David, where are you?" The voices started immediately. My mother, my sister, David. All of them calling back to me, telling me to come closer, to follow them deeper into the trees. But I also heard something else, David's real voice, not a copy, screaming. I ran toward it, crashing through underbrush, branches tearing at my clothes. The voices got louder, angrier, but I kept going. And then I saw him. David was standing in a small clearing, illuminated by moonlight. He was just standing there, completely still, facing away from me. "David!" I shouted. He turned around and I stopped. Something about the way he moved was wrong. Too smooth, too deliberate. And when he smiled at me, it was the same smile I'd seen on the little girl's face. Too wide. Wrong. "Rachel," he said in David's voice. "I've been waiting for you." I backed away. "Where's David? What did you do with him?" "I am David." He took a step toward me. "Don't you recognize me?" "You're not him. I know you're not." "How can you be sure?" He tilted his head. "How do you know the David you came here with was the real David?" "Maybe I've been David all along. Maybe I replaced him days ago and you never noticed." I wanted to say that was impossible, but I couldn't be certain. I tried to remember specific moments from the past few days, conversations we'd had, things he'd said or done, but it was all hazy, like trying to remember a dream. "What do you want?" I asked. "The same thing everyone wants, to not be alone." He spread his arms. "There are so many voices here, Rachel. So many people who got lost in these woods and never left. And we get lonely. So when new people come, people like you and David, we try to, connect. By mimicking us, by trapping us here, by becoming you." That smile again. "It's easier than you'd think. We listen to your voices, learn your patterns, slip into your lives. And eventually, you won't even remember which one is the real you and which one is us." Behind me, I heard movement. I turned and saw more figures emerging from the trees. Men, women, children, all with that same wrong smile, all watching me with hungry eyes. "You can't run," Not David said. "You're already part of this place. You have been since the storm. That's when we got inside. That's when we started learning you." I looked at the faces around me, dozens of them now, all strangers, all watching. And I realized that somewhere in these woods the real David might still be alive. Or he might not. I might have driven 3 hours to find a copy, a shell, something wearing his face. "I want to go home," I said. "You are home," Not David said gently. "You've always been home." I'm writing this from the motel room I mentioned at the beginning. After that night in the forest, I somehow made it back to my car. I don't remember the walk out. One moment I was surrounded by those figures, and the next I was behind the wheel, driving. The campground disappearing in my rearview mirror. I've been here for 3 days now. I'm afraid to go back to the apartment. I'm afraid of what I might find there, or who. My phone rings constantly, always unknown numbers, always my own voice on the other end asking where I am. David's parents called yesterday. They said David came home. He's at the apartment, worried about me. He told them I ran off and he doesn't know where I went. But I know that's not David, not the real one. The problem is I'm not sure I'm the real Rachel anymore either. Sometimes I catch my reflection in the bathroom mirror, and my smile looks wrong, too wide. And sometimes I hear myself calling from outside the motel room, asking to be let in. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know if the real me is still in those woods, screaming for help while some copy sits in this motel room writing this down. I don't know if David ever made it out, or if what came home to our apartment is something else entirely. All I know is that I can't stop hearing the voices. Even now, in the middle of the day, with traffic passing outside and people walking by, I hear them. My mother, my sister, David, myself, all of them calling, all of them waiting for me to answer. And the worst part is, I'm starting to want to answer. Starting to think that maybe they're right. Maybe I do belong there, in those woods, with all the other voices. Maybe I've been there all along and everything since the storm has been a dream I'm having as something else learns to wear my face. I should probably stop writing now. Someone's knocking on the motel room door. They're calling my name, my voice, my exact voice, asking to be let in. Saying she's me, the real me, and I'm the copy. Maybe she's right. Maybe I should open the door. Maybe it doesn't matter anymore which one of us is real. My name is Laura Bennett. I need to write this down while I can still remember who I am, or at least who I think I am. It started 3 weeks ago at Mirror Lake in Utah. I'd driven my RV up from Salt Lake City looking for exactly what everyone looks for when they run away. Space, silence, and a chance to forget. The divorce had been finalized in May, and by September I'd had enough of well-meaning friends asking how I was doing. Enough of sleeping in a house that felt like a museum of my failed marriage. I needed to be somewhere that didn't know me, didn't want anything from me. Mirror Lake seemed perfect. The campground sat at over 10,000 feet, tucked into the Uinta Mountains with the kind of pristine alpine beauty that shows up on desktop wallpapers. The lake itself was small, maybe half a mile across, surrounded by lodgepole pines and reflecting the sky so perfectly it looked like you could fall right through into another world. That should have been my first warning. I pulled into Site 23 on a Wednesday afternoon. September in the Uintas meant most of the summer crowds were gone. I counted maybe 5 other RVs spread across the campground, all positioned with that careful distance campers maintain. Close enough to know you're not alone, far enough to pretend you are. My spot sat on the eastern edge, backed up against thick forest with a partial view of the lake through the trees. The woman at the ranger station had been friendly enough when I checked in, though she'd given me an odd look when I mentioned I was staying 2 weeks. Alone? She'd asked. That's the idea. She'd nodded slowly, stamped my permit. Well, most folks start clearing out after Labor Day. Weather can turn quick up here. You have cold weather gear? I did. I'd been planning this trip since July, had bought a 0-degree sleeping bag I'd probably never need, downloaded offline maps, packed enough canned food to survive a month. I was prepared for isolation. What I wasn't prepared for was what isolation does to you when something else is sharing it. The first 2 days were exactly what I'd hoped for. I hiked the trails around the lake, read 3 novels, cooked simple meals on my camp stove, and went to bed early. The nights were cold enough that I could see my breath inside the RV until I got the heater running. I slept better than I had in months. It was Thursday evening, my 3rd night there, when I first saw her. I was cooking dinner outside, just pasta with jarred sauce. Nothing fancy. Standing at my portable camp table with my back to the forest. The sun was setting behind the mountains, throwing long shadows through the pines. I remember stirring the pot and thinking how quiet it was. Not peaceful quiet, just empty. No birds, no wind, no sounds from the other campers. That's when I felt it. The weight of being watched. I turned around slowly, spatula still in my hand, and looked into the trees. She stood about 30 yards back, partially hidden behind a cluster of pines. Same height as me, same build, same dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She wore jeans and a gray hoodie, the exact gray hoodie I was wearing. I stared. She didn't move. My first thought was that one of the other campers was playing a joke, or maybe I was seeing some weird reflection even though there was nothing reflective in the forest. I took a step toward the trees. It took a step back, maintaining the distance. Hello? My voice sounded small in all that space. No answer. She just stood there. And even from that distance, even in the failing light, I could tell she was looking directly at me. Her face was in shadow, but the angle of her head, the way she held herself, it was like looking at a photograph of myself. I walked closer to the tree line. She moved deeper into the forest, always keeping those 30 yards between us. The trees swallowed her quickly, and after a few seconds I couldn't see her anymore. I stood there until my pasta boiled over, until the hiss of water on the camp stove snapped me back to reality. My hands were shaking when I turned off the burner. There had to be an explanation. Someone who looked like me, wearing similar clothes. A coincidence. The light playing tricks. I was tired, stressed. My brain was creating patterns that weren't there. I'd read about that. How isolation can make you see things, especially if you're already in a fragile mental state. I ate my dinner inside the RV with the door locked. Told myself I was being ridiculous. Told myself I'd laugh about it tomorrow. I didn't go outside for the rest of the night. Friday morning I woke up determined to be rational about this. I took a long hike around the lake, intentionally looking for other campers. I found one, an older man with a silver Airstream about half a mile from my site. He was sitting outside reading when I walked past. "Morning," he called out. "Morning." I stopped, grateful for the human contact. "How's the camping?" "Can't complain. You up here alone?" "Yeah. You?" He nodded. "Wife passed 2 years ago. I do this every fall. You ever been to Mirror Lake before?" "First time. Beautiful spot." He paused. "Though I gotta say, something feels different this year. Can't put my finger on it." "Different how?" He shrugged. "Just a feeling. You ever get that sense that you're being watched, even when you can't see anyone?" My skin went cold. "Yeah. Actually, yeah. Probably just animals." But he didn't sound convinced. We talked for a few more minutes, small talk about weather and hiking trails before I continued my walk. I didn't mention what I'd seen the night before. What would I say? That I saw myself in the forest? He'd think I was crazy. Maybe I was. When I got back to my site around noon, something was different. My camp chair, the folding one I'd left sitting next to my picnic table, was now positioned 20 feet away at the edge of the tree line, facing my RV. I knew, absolutely knew, that I hadn't moved it. I'd been in too much of a hurry to lock myself inside the night before. I approached it slowly. There was nothing obviously wrong with it, just a chair. But it had been moved, and the only logical explanation was that someone had been in my campsite while I was gone. I checked the RV. Nothing seemed disturbed inside. My phone showed no service. It rarely did up here, but my GPS still worked. I pulled up the offline map, confirmed my location. Everything was where it should be, except that chair. I moved it back to its original spot and tried to forget about it. That afternoon I drove down to the ranger station, thinking maybe I'd feel better with some human contact. Maybe ask if they'd had any reports of people wandering between campsites. The woman from Wednesday wasn't there. Instead, a younger ranger, mid-20s, name tag reading Josh, sat behind the desk playing a game on his phone. "Help you?" he asked without looking up. "I'm staying at Site 23. Just wanted to check if there have been any issues with people bothering other campers." That got his attention. He put down his phone. "What kind of bothering?" "I don't know. Just someone might have been in my campsite this morning." "You see anybody?" "No." "Anything stolen?" "No." He shrugged. Could have been an animal. Bears will sometimes move stuff around looking for food. It was a camp chair, moved about 20 feet and positioned facing my RV. He stared at me. "That's weird." "Yeah. Look, I'll make a note of it, but honestly, we only have 5 occupied sites right now, and I know all those campers. They're regulars, not the type to cause trouble." He paused. "You sure you didn't move it yourself and forget?" "I'm sure." But was I? That was the thing that had been gnawing at me since I found it. I'd been stressed, sleeping poorly despite the good sleep I thought I was getting. What if I had moved it? What if I'd gotten up in the night, rearranged my campsite in some sleepwalking fugue state, and just didn't remember? "There's a payphone outside if you need to call someone," Josh offered. "Service is pretty much non-existent up here." "Thanks." I didn't call anyone. Who would I call? My ex-husband, who'd spent our entire marriage telling me I was too anxious, too paranoid. My mother, who'd think this proved I shouldn't have gone camping alone. My friends, who were all getting tired of my post-divorce crisis. I drove back to my campsite and spent the rest of the afternoon reading in the RV, hyper-aware of every small sound. The wind in the pines, the settling of the RV's frame, the distant sound of water lapping against the shore. As evening approached, I realized I didn't want to cook dinner outside. The thought of standing at that camp table with my back to the forest made my stomach clench, but I also refused to let fear control me. I'd come here to reclaim my independence, to prove I could be alone and be fine. Hiding inside because I thought I'd seen something would defeat the entire purpose. So at 6 p.m. I went outside, set up my camp stove, and started cooking. Rice and beans this time. Simple. Hard to mess up even if my hands were shaking. I didn't turn around. I told myself I wouldn't turn around. I'd cook my dinner, eat it quickly, and go back inside. But the feeling came back. That weight between my shoulder blades. That absolute certainty that someone was watching. I made it maybe 5 minutes before I looked. She was closer this time, maybe 20 yards, standing in the same spot where my camp chair had been, arms hanging loose at her sides. The sun was setting behind me now, throwing golden light across the campsite, and I could see her face clearly. It was my face, not similar, not just someone who looked like me. My face. Same nose, same mouth, same small scar above my left eyebrow from when I'd fallen off a bike at age 8. She wore the gray hoodie and jeans, and her hair was pulled back in a ponytail with a few strands falling loose around her face, exactly like mine. We stood there, maybe 10 seconds, staring at each other. Then she smiled. It wasn't my smile. It was something wearing my smile, something that didn't quite understand how a smile was supposed to look. Too wide, too many teeth. I ran. I don't remember dropping the spatula, don't remember turning off the camp stove. I just remember the sound of my boots hitting the gravel, my hands fumbling with the RV door, the slam as I threw myself inside and locked it. I pressed my back against the door, breathing hard, and waited for something to happen. For her to follow me, to knock, to try the handle. But there was only silence. After a few minutes, I worked up the courage to look out the window. She was gone. The campsite was empty. My partially cooked dinner sat abandoned on the camp table, steam still rising from the pot. I stayed inside the rest of the night, every light in the RV turned on, jumping at every sound. Around midnight, I finally worked up the courage to peer out the window toward the forest. She stood at the tree line, same position, watching. I jerked back from the window, heart hammering. Counted to 10. Looked again. Gone. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that smile. Saturday morning, I packed up. This was done. Over. I'd lost it. I was seeing things. I needed to get back to civilization and probably talk to a therapist. The divorce, the stress, the isolation. It had been too much. That was fine. I could admit that. I loaded everything into the RV, broke down my campsite, and got behind the wheel. My hands still shook, but I felt better now that I was leaving. I'd go back to Salt Lake City, get my head straight, and laugh about this someday. The time I drove 6 hours into the mountains and had a nervous breakdown. I put the RV in drive and headed for the campground exit. 3 hours later, I pulled back into Site 23. I sat in the driver's seat staring at my campsite, trying to understand what had just happened. I'd driven down the mountain road, taken the correct turns, followed my GPS exactly. But every road I took somehow looped back around. I'd pass familiar landmarks, a fallen log, a distinctive rock formation, and realize I was heading back the way I'd come. The GPS kept recalculating, showing me getting farther from the lake, then suddenly showing me right back where I started. I'd tried 4 different routes. All of them brought me back here. My phone showed 2 p.m. I'd left at 11 a.m., 3 hours of driving in circles. I got out of the RV and walked to the ranger station. Josh was still there, still playing on his phone. "Back already?" he asked. "I can't leave." "What?" "Every road I take, I end up back at my campsite. I've tried 4 times. He set down his phone. "That doesn't make sense. There's only one road out of here, and it goes straight down the mountain." "I know that." But I'm telling you, I can't leave. Something's wrong. Are you feeling okay? Do you need me to call someone? No. I need you to get in your truck and drive me out of here. He hesitated. Look, I can't just leave my post. Please. Something in my voice must have gotten through to him. He studied my face, saw whatever was written there, and nodded. Okay. Let me radio the main office. 10 minutes later, we were in his Park Service truck, heading down the mountain. I watched the GPS on my phone, watched us get 2 miles, 3 miles, 4 miles from Mirror Lake. Then the road curved and we were back. Josh slammed on the brakes. We both stared through the windshield at the campground entrance. What the hell? He whispered. I told you. That's not possible. We were heading north. The lake is south of us now. We should be 15 miles away. But we weren't. We were back. Josh turned the truck around and tried again. Same result. We drove for 20 minutes and somehow ended up exactly where we started. On the third attempt, his radio crackled to life. Static, mostly, but underneath it, I could hear something that might have been a voice. Josh grabbed the radio. Unit 7 to base, come in. More static, then cutting through the white noise. Turn back. Say again? Turn back, you can't leave. The voice was female. It sounded like the ranger from Wednesday. It also sounded like me. Josh dropped the radio like it had burned him. He didn't say anything for a long moment, just stared through the windshield at the road ahead. This isn't happening, he finally said. We should go back to the station, figure this out. Yeah, okay. We drove back in silence. Josh dropped me at my campsite and returned to the ranger station without another word. I watched his truck disappear down the gravel road and felt the weight of the forest close in around me. I was trapped. The rational part of my brain was screaming that this couldn't be real, that there had to be some explanation. Gas leak causing hallucinations, carbon monoxide poisoning, a psychological break. But I'd been in Josh's truck, I'd watched the GPS with him, and unless we were both having the exact same breakdown at the exact same time, something was very wrong with Mirror Lake. I went back inside my RV and tried my phone, no service. I tried the emergency SOS function. It spun for a minute, then failed. I was well and truly alone. That evening I saw her again. Of course I did. But this time she wasn't alone. I'd been sitting at the dinette, forcing myself to eat some crackers and cheese, when movement outside the window caught my eye. 2 figures at the tree line. One was her, me. The other was the old man from the Airstream, except he was also standing next to his own RV, about half a mile away. I could see him through the trees walking around his campsite, moving normally. And yet he was also at my tree line, standing perfectly still next to my doppelganger. I pressed my face against the window, trying to understand what I was seeing. The old man at the tree line tilted his head, studying me. His movements were jerky, wrong, like a puppet whose strings were being pulled by someone who didn't quite understand human motion. Then he smiled, the same too wide smile my doppelganger had given me. I closed all the curtains and turned off the lights. Something was taking us, copying us. I didn't understand how or why, but the pattern was clear. First me, now the old man. Who would be next? Josh? The other campers I'd seen. I needed to warn them. But how? I had no way to call for help, no way to leave. And even if I walked to their campsites, would they believe me? Or would they think I was crazy? Maybe I was crazy. Maybe this was all in my head, some elaborate delusion brought on by stress and isolation. But if it was, why could Josh see it too? Why had he heard that voice on the radio? I spent the night curled up on my bed listening to sounds outside. Footsteps on gravel, branches scraping against the RV's exterior. Voices that might have been the wind or might have been something else, whispering words I couldn't quite make out. Around 3 a.m. I heard a knock on the door. Laura? It was my voice. Laura, open up. It's me. I didn't move, barely breathed. I know you're scared, my voice continued, but I need you to open the door. We need to talk. Go away. I can't do that. Not until you understand. Understand what? A pause. Open the door and I'll explain everything. No. Another pause, longer this time. Then, you know I'll get in eventually. You can't hide from me. I am you. I pressed my hands over my ears like a child, trying to block out that voice. My voice, speaking words I'd never said, with inflections that were almost but not quite right. The knocking continued for another 10 minutes before it stopped. I waited another hour before I dared to look out the window. She stood in the middle of my campsite right next to my camp table. But she was different now. Her clothes were wrong. She wore the outfit I'd had on yesterday, not today. Her hair was different too, styled the way I'd worn it a decade ago. And there was something off about her proportions, like someone had tried to build me from memory and gotten the details slightly wrong. Arms a little too long, head tilted at an angle that didn't quite work with human anatomy. She was breaking down, or I was. I couldn't tell anymore. Sunday morning I decided to find the others. Sitting in my RV waiting for something to happen wasn't an option. I needed to know if they were experiencing the same thing, if they could see what I was seeing. Strength in numbers, right? That's what they always said. I armed myself with a kitchen knife. Ridiculous, but it made me feel slightly better, and left the RV. The campground was quiet. Too quiet. No sounds of generators, no campfire smoke, no people moving around their sites. I walked the gravel road toward the old man's Airstream, knife hidden in my jacket pocket, jumping at every shadow. His campsite was empty. Not just empty, abandoned. The Airstream was still there, door hanging open, but all his personal belongings were gone. Camp chairs, firewood, the book he'd been reading, all vanished, like he'd packed up and left in a hurry, or like he'd never been there at all. I checked the next site. Same thing. RV still present, but completely empty of anything that suggested a human being had recently lived there. By the time I reached the 5th site, I was running. Every campsite I checked showed the same pattern. Vehicles remained, but the people and all their belongings were gone. I was alone in the campground. No, not alone. I could feel them watching me from the forest. All of them. Copies of everyone who'd been here, standing just beyond the tree line, waiting. I ran back to my RV and locked myself inside. The rest of Sunday passed in a blur of fear and exhaustion. I tried to rest but couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her standing at the tree line, saw the old man with his puppet movements, saw shadows that looked like people but moved all wrong. As evening approached, I realized I hadn't eaten all day. I forced down some granola and water, knowing I needed to keep my strength up even if my stomach was churning. That's when I heard the RV door open. I'd locked it. I knew I'd locked it, but now it was opening, hinges creaking, and someone was climbing the steps. Josh appeared in my doorway. Normal, human Josh from the ranger station. He looked exhausted, his uniform rumpled, dark circles under his eyes. "Jesus Christ, Laura. I've been looking everywhere for you," he said. I gripped my kitchen knife. "How did you get in?" "The door was unlocked. Are you okay? You look..." The door was locked. He stopped, studying my face. Okay, I believe you. Something's really wrong here. I've been trying to leave since yesterday and I can't. The radio's dead. I went to check on the other campers and they're all gone. I know, I checked too. What the hell is happening? I wanted to trust him. God, I wanted so badly to not be alone in this. But something felt wrong. Maybe it was the way he stood too straight, too still. Maybe it was how his eyes didn't quite track right when he looked around the RV. Or maybe I'd just been in isolation too long and couldn't trust my own perceptions anymore. "Where were you this morning?" I asked. "At the station. I've been trying to reach someone on the radio, trying to fix my truck." "Why?" "I went to the station around 10. You weren't there." He frowned. "Must have been when I was checking the other campsites." "You just said you've been at the station all morning." He didn't miss a beat. "Right, sorry. I meant I was going back and forth, checking sites, coming back to try the radio. It's all kind of blurred together." I tightened my grip on the knife. "Take off your hat." "What?" Your ranger hat. Take it off. Laura, do it. He reached up slowly and removed his hat. His hair looked normal, human. But when he smiled, trying to reassure me, I think, the smile was wrong. Too wide, too many teeth. I threw the knife. I didn't aim well, wasn't trying to kill him, just wanted him away from me. The knife embedded itself in the wall next to his head. He didn't flinch, just turned his head slowly to look at it, then back at me. That wasn't very nice, Laura. I grabbed another knife from the drawer, the biggest one I had. Get out. We just want to understand you. Is that so wrong? Get out of my RV. You can't keep running from yourself, from us. We're trying to help. I'm going to count to 3. There's nowhere to run, Laura. The lake won't let you leave. It wants you here. It wants all of you. 1. We could be happy here, all of us together. Perfect reflections. 2. He took a step toward me. I raised the knife. Don't you want to know what you really are? Under all the pretense? We can show you. I didn't get to 3. I lunged forward, slashing wildly. The knife caught his arm, drew blood, or something like blood, darker and thicker. He grabbed my wrist with impossible strength, squeezed until I dropped the knife. Then he leaned in close and I could smell him. Wrong. Chemical. Like plastic melting. You'll understand soon, he whispered in a voice that was no longer Josh's, no longer human. When you see what's in the water. He let me go and walked out of the RV, unhurried, leaving the door open behind him. I collapsed on the floor, sobbing, cradling my bruised wrist. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. I barricaded the door with the dinette table and kept both my remaining knives within reach. Outside, I could hear them moving around my campsite. Footsteps, voices, the scrape of something being dragged across gravel. Around 2 a.m., all the sounds stopped. I waited 20 minutes before I looked out the window. They were all there, standing in a circle around my RV. Maybe 20 of them. Copies of me, copies of Josh, copies of the old man and the other campers I'd never properly met. All of them perfectly still. All of them staring at my windows with those empty, wrong faces. And in the center of the circle, in the space where my camp table used to be, there was a hole in the ground, freshly dug, deep enough that I couldn't see the bottom. I watched them for hours. They never moved, never blinked, just stood there in their circle, waiting. As dawn broke Monday morning, they finally left. One by one they turned and walked into the forest, moving in perfect synchronization, until I was alone again. I should have stayed in the RV, I know that now. But I had to see the hole. Had to understand what they'd been doing, what they wanted me to see. I took my knife and went outside. The hole was about 6 feet across, perfectly circular, walls smooth like they'd been cut by a machine. I approached slowly, every instinct screaming at me to turn back. But I had to know. I reached the edge and looked down. The hole went deep. Maybe 20 feet, maybe more. And at the bottom, barely visible in the morning light, was water. Still black water that reflected nothing. Mirror lake water. I stared at it, transfixed. The surface was so smooth, so perfect. And as I watched, something moved beneath it. A pale shape, rising slowly toward the surface. It broke through with barely a ripple. A face, looking up at me from 20 feet down. My face. But this one was different from the copies I'd seen. This one was older, worn, with hollow eyes and skin that looked thin as paper. This one looked like it had been in the water a long time. It smiled at me. Not the too wide smile of the copies. A knowing smile. A sad smile. Then it sank back down into the darkness. I stepped away from the hole, back toward my RV, tried to process what I'd just seen. The lake was full of them, full of us. All the people who'd come to Mirror Lake over the years, all the reflections that had looked at their faces in that perfect water and seen something look back. The copies weren't trying to replace us. They were trying to bring us home, down into the water where we belonged, where we'd always belonged, because we were the reflections. We'd always been the reflections. I don't know how long I stood there trying to understand. Hours, maybe. The sun climbed overhead, indifferent to my crisis. Eventually, I went back inside the RV and sat at the dinette, staring at nothing. That night, she came back. My original. My real. She stood at my window, looking in. "You understand now," she said. Not a question. I nodded. "We can end this. You can rest. What happens if I go in the water?" "You become what you've always been. A reflection, returning to the source. And if I don't?" She tilted her head. "You'll stay here, forever, trapped between worlds, neither real nor reflection. We've been watching you, Laura, watching you for so long, since the divorce, since the sleepless nights, since you stopped being sure who you were. You looked in mirrors and didn't recognize yourself. You felt like you were living someone else's life." She was right. God help me, she was right. "The real Laura Bennett died 3 years ago," she continued. "Car accident on I-15. You were the reflection in her rearview mirror, the last thing she saw before impact. And somehow, when she died, you kept going. Stepped out of that mirror and took her place. Lived her life. Felt her feelings. Remembered her memories. But you were always just a copy, just a reflection, pretending to be real." I started crying. I couldn't help it. "The lake calls us home," she said softly. "All of us. Every reflection that ever stayed too long, looked too deeply, wanted too much to be real. We belong in the water, Laura. We belong with the source. I don't want to die. You're already dead. You've been dead for 3 years. You just didn't know it." I looked down at my hands. They seemed solid enough. Real enough. But maybe she was right. Maybe I'd been living on borrowed time, borrowed reality, a reflection that refused to fade. "Will it hurt?" I asked. "No. It's just like going to sleep. And when you wake up, you'll be with all the others. All the reflections. We take care of each other down there. It's peaceful." I wanted to believe her. Part of me did believe her, but another part, the part that had driven 6 hours into these mountains looking for peace, looking for myself, that part still wanted to fight. "I need time to think." She nodded. "I'll be here. I'll always be here." She faded back into the darkness, and I was alone again. That was 3 days ago. I've been writing this down ever since, trying to make sense of it, trying to decide what to do. The hole in my campsite is still there, the water at the bottom still and dark. Sometimes I see them in the forest, watching, waiting. I've tried leaving again. The roads still loop back. I'm still trapped. Yesterday I went to Josh's ranger station. He was there, the real Josh, or what was left of him. He'd hanged himself from the ceiling beam, his ranger hat placed neatly on the desk below. There was a note. "Better this than becoming something else." I'm not sure I disagree. I've been standing at the edge of the hole for the past hour. The water calls to me. I can feel it pulling, inviting, promising rest. The copies gather at the tree line, patient. My original stands closest, her hand extended, offering. Maybe she's right. Maybe I am just a reflection, a copy that overstayed its welcome. Maybe the real Laura Bennett did die 3 years ago, and I'm just the ghost of her final glance in the rearview mirror, given form by some property of Mirror Lake that I don't understand. Or maybe this is all a trick. Maybe I'm real and she's the copy, and if I give in, if I walk into that water, I'll be giving up my life for nothing. I don't know anymore. I can't tell the difference between memory and imagination, between what I experienced and what I've convinced myself happened. The divorce. Did it really happen? Or did I just inherit those memories from a dead woman? My childhood, my friends, my life, are any of them real? When I look in the side mirror of my RV, my reflection doesn't quite match my movements anymore. There's a lag, like a bad video stream. And sometimes when I'm not looking directly at it, I swear I see it move on its own. I think I'm going to go into the water tonight. Not because I believe her. Not because I think I'm really a reflection, but because I can't live like this anymore. Can't live not knowing what's real, questioning every memory, every thought, every moment of existence. 3 years or 30, real or reflection? What difference does it make if I can't trust any of it? The water promises peace. Maybe that's enough. Or maybe I'll wake up tomorrow and this will all have been a dream. Maybe I'll drive down the mountain and check myself into a hospital and get the help I need. Maybe the rational explanation is the right one. Carbon monoxide, psychological break, stress-induced psychosis. But I don't think so. I can see them now, gathering in the dusk. All of them. All the reflections. They're beautiful in their way, perfect copies of imperfect people. They're smiling, not the wrong smiles, not anymore. Real smiles. Welcoming. My original stands at the edge of the hole, hand still extended. I'm going to take it. I'm going to... The preceding text was recovered from a laptop found in an abandoned RV at Mirror Lake Campground on September 19th. The RV was registered to Laura Bennett of Salt Lake City, who was reported missing by her employer when she failed to return from vacation. A search of the campground revealed several abandoned vehicles, but no sign of their occupants. A large hole was found at campsite 23, approximately 6 feet in diameter and 15 feet deep, terminating in a small pool of groundwater. Divers were sent down but found nothing unusual. The water tested clean. Laura Bennett's body was never recovered. The case remains open. My name is Kelly Anderson. I'm 34 years old. I work in accounts receivable for a mid-sized insurance company in Salt Lake City, and 3 weeks ago, I went on a camping trip with 5 of my coworkers that I still can't explain. I'm writing this down because I need to get it out and because I keep hearing it. The chanting. Even now, sitting in my apartment with all the lights on and the TV playing, I can hear it underneath everything else. The trip was Marcus's idea. Marcus Chen, our department manager, one of those guys who's always talking about team synergy and building connections outside the office. He'd bought this massive RV, a 32-foot Class A motorhome that he was extremely proud of, and he'd been looking for an excuse to use it. When he proposed the trip at our monthly meeting, most of us were reluctant, but he had this way of making it seem like it wasn't really optional. Voluntary, but strongly encouraged. He'd said with that smile that meant your performance review might suffer if you declined. So 6 of us ended up committed to a long weekend in Fish Lake National Forest. Besides Marcus and me, there was Jennifer Oakes from HR, a quiet woman in her 40s who kept to herself mostly. David Park, another accountant younger than me, fresh out of college and trying too hard to impress everyone. Shanice Williams from customer service, who I actually liked. We sometimes got lunch together. And Robert Cunningham, IT guy, mid-30s, divorced, the type who made awkward jokes that never quite landed. We left on a Thursday afternoon in late September. The plan was to camp Thursday through Sunday, get back Monday morning. Marcus drove the RV with Jennifer in the passenger seat. The rest of us sat in the back, which had a dinette area, a couch, and a small kitchen. David wouldn't shut up about how expensive the RV was, asking Marcus technical questions about the engine and the water system. Shanice and I mostly looked out the windows. Robert played something on his phone with the sound off. The drive to Fish Lake took about 4 hours. The campground Marcus had reserved was on the eastern edge of the forest, a place called 7 Mile Campsite. He'd chosen it because it had full hookups for the RV and was supposed to be pretty isolated. Rustic, he'd called it, a real escape from the digital world. We arrived around 8 in the evening. It was already getting dark, and the temperature had dropped significantly. The campground was more primitive than the website had suggested. There were maybe a dozen sites total, most of them empty. The one other occupied site had a small tent, but we didn't see anyone around it. Our spot was at the far end, backing up against dense pine forest. The only facilities were a single concrete bathroom building about 100 yards away and a gravel parking area. Marcus spent an hour getting the RV leveled and hooked up to the electrical post. The rest of us stood around trying to help, but mostly just getting in the way. Jennifer made coffee in the RV's kitchen. David took pictures of everything with his phone, talking about posting them on the company's social media page. Shanice and I walked to the bathroom to check it out. It was cold and dimly lit, with 2 sinks, 2 toilets, and a shower that looked like it hadn't been cleaned in months. "This is going to be a long weekend," Shanice said. "Yeah," I agreed. When we got back, Marcus had set up 2 folding chairs outside the RV and was trying to start a fire in the metal fire ring. Robert was helping him, or trying to. It took them another 20 minutes to get it going. We all sat around it for a while, not saying much. Marcus made hamburgers on a small propane grill. We ate them with chips and beer. Jennifer declined the beer and drank bottled water instead. Around 10, David said he'd heard something in the woods. We all stopped talking and listened, but I didn't hear anything except wind in the trees. David insisted he'd heard voices, or maybe chanting, coming from somewhere to the north. Marcus told him it was probably people at one of the other campsites. But when we looked around, we couldn't see any lights from other sites, and the tent site we'd seen earlier was dark. "Could be a campfire further in the forest," Robert suggested. "Sound carries weird out here." We listened again. This time I thought maybe I heard something. A low, rhythmic sound that could have been voices, or could have been wind, or could have been my imagination. It was too far away and too indistinct to be sure. "Probably just locals," Marcus said. "This is a national forest. There's probably dispersed camping all over the place." We stayed around the fire for another hour. Jennifer went inside the RV first, saying she was tired. David followed soon after. Shanice and I talked for a while about work, about how Marcus was probably going to use this trip as material for some team-building evaluation. Robert sat quietly, occasionally adding wood to the fire. Marcus had gone inside but came back out with another beer. Around midnight, Shanice called it a night. That left Marcus, Robert, and me. We didn't have much to talk about. Marcus asked about my weekend plans after we got back, and I told him I didn't have any. Robert mentioned something about his ex-wife and their custody arrangement. The conversation died out. I went inside at 12:30. The RV had 1 bedroom in the back where Marcus was sleeping, and the dinette converted into a bed which Jennifer had taken. David had the couch. That left Shanice, Robert, and me with sleeping bags on the floor. Shanice had claimed the spot near the bedroom door. Robert took the space by the kitchen. I ended up in the narrow walkway between the dinette and the couch, right next to the main door. I didn't sleep well. The floor was hard, even with the sleeping bag padding, and I could hear everything. David snoring on the couch above me, Robert shifting around, the RV creaking and settling. And underneath all of that, very faint, that rhythmic sound David had mentioned. I told myself it was wind. I told myself it was nothing. I finally fell asleep around 2 or 3 in the morning. I woke up to Marcus making coffee around 7. Everyone else was still asleep except Jennifer, who was sitting at the dinette reading something on her tablet. I got up, folded my sleeping bag, and joined her. Marcus handed me a cup of coffee. "Sleep okay?" he asked. "Not great," I said. "Yeah, first night camping's always rough. You get used to it." I doubted we'd be there long enough to get used to anything, but I didn't say that. David woke up next, then Shanice and Robert. We ate breakfast, instant oatmeal and toast, and Marcus laid out his plan for the day. He wanted to do a hike, explore the area, get some photos. There was supposed to be a scenic overlook about 3 miles from the campground. Jennifer said she'd rather stay at the camp and read. Robert volunteered to stay with her, saying he had some work emails to catch up on, which seemed to defeat the whole escape from the digital world thing. But Marcus didn't argue. So it was Marcus, David, Shanice, and me on the hike. We left around 9, following a trail that started near the bathroom building. Marcus had a paper map and a compass, though David kept trying to use his phone's GPS until he realized there was no signal out here. The hike was unremarkable at first. Pine trees, some aspens turning yellow, rocky terrain. David took photos of everything. Marcus walked ahead, consulting his map. Shanice and I fell into step together, talking about nothing important. The weather was nice, cool, but not cold. Some clouds, but mostly clear. We reached the overlook around 11. It was a rocky outcropping with a view of the valley below and mountains in the distance. Marcus took photos. David took photos. Shanice and I sat on a flat rock and shared a granola bar. Marcus pointed out various landmarks, consulting his map, naming peaks and ridges that all looked the same to me. We started back around 11:30. That's when things began to feel off. The trail should have taken us back the same way we came, but after about 20 minutes of walking, nothing looked familiar. Marcus kept checking his map and the compass, frowning. David suggested we might have taken a wrong turn, but we hadn't seen any turnoffs. "We're going the right direction," Marcus insisted. "This is north. The campground is north." But the landscape didn't match. The trees were denser, darker somehow. The trail seemed narrower. After another 15 minutes, we came to a small clearing that definitely hadn't been there on the way up. "Are you sure we're going the right way?" Shanice asked. "Positive," Marcus said, but he didn't sound positive. We kept walking. The trail seemed to loop back on itself. After what felt like an hour, we emerged into another clearing. Maybe the same clearing, I couldn't tell. Marcus stopped and studied his map more carefully. "This doesn't make sense," he said. "Maybe we should just backtrack to the overlook," David suggested. "Start fresh from there." "We've been walking away from the overlook," Marcus said. "We're definitely heading north." Except we didn't seem to be getting anywhere. We walked for another hour, maybe longer. My phone had no signal and was useless for navigation. Marcus's compass started acting strange. The needle would spin slowly, then lock onto a direction that didn't seem right, then spin again. "That's not normal," David said, stating the obvious. We ended up in the same clearing again, or one that looked exactly like it. There was a fallen tree in the center, covered in moss. I was certain we'd seen it before. "We're going in circles," Shanice said. "That's not possible," Marcus said. "I've been watching the compass, watching the sun. We've been heading in a straight line." But we were back in the clearing. There was no other explanation. We tried a different direction, using the sun instead of the compass. After another 30 minutes, we were back in the clearing. The fallen tree, the dense trees on all sides. It was the same place. "This is insane," David said. He was starting to panic, I could tell. His voice had gone up half an octave. Marcus tried to stay calm, but I could see the concern on his face. We'd left the campground around 9. It was now at least 2 or 3 in the afternoon, maybe later. We should have been back hours ago. "Jennifer and Robert will realize we're missing," Shanice said. "They'll get help." "There's no cell signal," I reminded her. "They'd have to drive somewhere to call for help. And we have the only vehicle." "Marcus drove," David said. "Jennifer was in the passenger seat. She might have a key." Marcus checked his pockets and shook his head. "I have the only key." We stood in the clearing and tried to figure out what to do. Marcus suggested we pick a direction and just keep walking no matter what. Maybe we were overthinking it. Maybe we just needed to commit to a path and follow it through. We tried that. We picked what seemed like east based on the sun's position and walked in as straight a line as possible. 45 minutes later, we were back in the clearing. "Okay," Marcus said. "Okay, I don't know what this is." David was openly frightened now. Shanice looked pale. I felt a strange calmness, the kind you get when something is so wrong that fear becomes useless. "We should stay here," I said. "If we keep walking, we just end up back here anyway. Let's stay put and wait. Jennifer and Robert will eventually come looking." Marcus didn't like that idea, but he didn't have a better one. We sat down in the clearing. Marcus handed out the water bottles we'd brought. We each had about half a bottle left. We had one granola bar to split 4 ways. We hadn't planned to be out here this long. We waited. An hour passed, maybe 2. The sun started to sink lower. I kept checking my phone even though I knew there was no signal. 4:47 p.m., then 5:23 p.m., then 6:02 p.m. "We need to try again before it gets dark," Marcus said finally. None of us wanted to walk in circles in the dark, so we agreed. We picked what we thought was north this time and started walking. Same result. Back in the clearing. The light was fading fast now. Panic was setting in, even for me. That's when we heard it. The chanting. It came from somewhere to the west, or what we thought was west. Multiple voices, low and rhythmic. Not words exactly, or not words in any language I recognized. Just sounds, repeated over and over in a pattern. "What is that?" David whispered. We stood frozen, listening. The chanting continued, steady and constant. It sounded like it was coming from maybe a quarter-mile away, though distance was hard to judge. "People," Marcus said. "That's people. We can ask them for help." "That doesn't sound like people asking for help," Shanice said, but Marcus was already moving toward the sound. David followed him. Shanice looked at me and I shrugged. What else were we going to do? Sit in the clearing until we died of thirst? We followed the chanting. The forest seemed to open up for us this time. The trees thinned out and we could see a faint glow ahead. Firelight, probably. The chanting got louder. Still rhythmic. Still in that language that wasn't a language. My stomach felt tight. Every instinct told me to turn around, to go back. But back where? The clearing where we'd been trapped for hours? We came to the edge of another clearing, much larger than the one we'd been in. The firelight came from a massive bonfire in the center. There were people around it, maybe 20 of them, all dressed in dark clothes. They were moving in a circle around the fire and they were chanting. We stopped at the tree line, staying hidden. Marcus made a gesture for us to stay quiet. We watched. The people circling the fire were all ages, young, old, some children. They moved in a slow, deliberate pattern, counterclockwise around the flames. Their chanting rose and fell, sometimes almost a whisper, sometimes louder and more insistent. In the center of the circle I could see something on the ground near the fire, but I couldn't make out what it was. "We should go," I whispered to Marcus. "Wait," he said. "Maybe when they're done." But Shanice grabbed my arm. "Kelly, look." She was pointing to the far side of the clearing. There were more people there, standing still watching the ceremony. They weren't participating, just observing. And even from this distance, even in the dim light, I could see that something was wrong with them. The way they stood. The way they held themselves. Too still. Too quiet. One of them turned its head. I say "it's" because I couldn't think of it as a person anymore. And looked directly at us. It didn't have eyes, not in any normal sense. Just dark hollows where eyes should be. "Run," Shanice said. We ran. Back through the forest, branches hitting us, roots catching our feet. The chanting followed us, or seemed to. I couldn't tell if it was actually getting louder, or if it was just in my head. David was ahead of me, then he wasn't, then he was behind me. Everything was confused. We ran until we couldn't run anymore, and then we stumbled into the campground. We came out of the trees about 50 yards from our RV. The bathroom building was there, our fire ring, everything exactly as we'd left it. The RV's lights were on inside. We stood there gasping, trying to catch our breath. Marcus checked his watch. "It's 8:30. We've been gone 11 and a half hours. "Did that just happen?" David asked. "Did we just see—" "Don't," Shanice said. "Don't talk about it." We walked to the RV. Jennifer opened the door as we approached. "There you are." We were starting to worry. "Hike took longer than expected?" "You didn't come looking for us?" Marcus asked. "Come looking? You've only been gone." She checked her own watch. "Oh, I guess it has been a while." Robert and I were reading. Time got away from us. "You guys okay? You look terrible." We went inside. Robert was at the dinette with his laptop. He glanced up and nodded. "How was the hike?" None of us answered. We got water from the RV's tank and drank it. Marcus sat down heavily on the couch. David was shaking. Shanice and I stood near the kitchen, not looking at each other. "Seriously, what happened?" Jennifer asked. "You guys look like you've seen a ghost." "We got lost," Marcus said finally. "Took a wrong turn. It took us a while to find our way back." Lost, Robert said. For 11 hours? Did you at least find something interesting? No, Marcus said. Nothing interesting, just trees. Jennifer made dinner, pasta from a box, canned sauce. None of us ate much. David excused himself and went outside. Through the window I could see him pacing near the fire ring, his phone in his hand, probably still hoping for a signal. Marcus sat on the couch and stared at nothing. Shanice and I cleaned up the dishes without talking. Around 10, Robert said he was going to the bathroom. He grabbed a flashlight and headed out. We heard the RV door close. Jennifer went to bed in the dinette area. David came back inside and took his spot on the couch. Marcus went to the bedroom. That left Shanice and me in the main area. We got our sleeping bags set up. Robert still hadn't come back. Maybe we should check on him, Shanice said. He's fine, I said. Probably just taking his time. But 15 minutes passed, then 20. The bathroom was only 100 yards away. It shouldn't take this long. I'm going to check, Shanice said. I'll come with you. We took another flashlight and went outside. The night was cold and very dark. Our flashlight beam seemed weak against the blackness. We walked toward the bathroom building, calling Robert's name. No answer. The bathroom was empty. No sign of Robert. No sign that anyone had been there recently. Maybe he went for a walk, Shanice suggested. In the dark? After what we just... I stopped. We both heard it. The chanting. Distant, but unmistakable. That same rhythmic pattern we'd heard in the forest. No, Shanice said. No, we're back at the campground. We're safe here. But the chanting continued. It seemed to be coming from the forest behind our campsite, the same direction we'd come from earlier. We need to get back to the RV, I said. We hurried back, but before we reached it, we saw Robert. He was standing at the edge of the campsite, right where the gravel met the tree line. His back was to us. He was completely still. Robert, Shanice called. He didn't move, didn't respond. We walked closer, our flashlight beam landing on him. He was still wearing the same clothes, still holding his flashlight in his right hand, but the flashlight was off. He just stood there, facing the forest. Robert, what are you doing? I asked. Slowly, he turned around. The flashlight beam caught his face. His expression was blank. His eyes were open, but didn't seem to see us. There was something wrong with the way he stood, the way he held himself, like a puppet with loose strings. Robert? Shanice said again. He smiled. It wasn't a normal smile. It was too wide, too tight, like someone had told him to smile, but he'd forgotten how muscles worked. I'm fine, he said. His voice sounded normal, which somehow made it worse. Just looking at the stars. You had us worried, I said. You've been gone almost half an hour. Have I? He looked at his watch, that same strange smile fixed on his face. I suppose I have. I should go to bed. He walked past us toward the RV. His movements were jerky, not quite right. Like he was remembering how to walk, but having to think about each step. Shanice and I watched him go inside, then looked at each other. That's not... Shanice started. I know, I said. We stood outside for a while, neither of us wanting to go back into the RV with Robert. The chanting had stopped, or maybe we couldn't hear it anymore. Finally, the cold drove us inside. Robert was already in his sleeping bag, eyes closed. But I didn't think he was asleep. His body was too rigid, too still. Normal sleeping people shift and move. Robert looked like a corpse. I lay in my sleeping bag and stared at the ceiling. Shanice was next to me, also awake. I could tell from her breathing. I could hear David snoring on the couch above me. Jennifer's steady breathing from the dinette. Marcus moving around in the bedroom. And Robert. Robert who wasn't breathing, or wasn't breathing in a normal rhythm. Every minute or so, he'd take one deep breath and then nothing for another minute. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there and counted Robert's breaths. 1 per minute exactly, for hours. Morning came eventually. Marcus was the first one up, making coffee again. Robert sat up in his sleeping bag, that same wrong smile on his face. "Good morning," he said, too cheerful. Jennifer and David woke up. Shanice and I hadn't really slept. We all crowded into the small kitchen area. Marcus poured coffee. Robert declined his, saying he wasn't thirsty. He hadn't been hungry last night either, I remembered. He'd skipped dinner. "So what's the plan for today?" David asked. "I was thinking we could," Marcus started, but Jennifer interrupted him. "I want to go home," she said. "I'm not feeling well. I think I'm coming down with something." "We just got here," Marcus said. "We've been here 2 days," Jennifer corrected him. "And I don't feel good. I'd like to leave." Marcus looked annoyed, but he agreed. "Okay, fine. We'll pack up and head out after breakfast." But packing took longer than expected. First, Marcus couldn't get the electrical hookup disconnected properly. Then one of the water hoses had a leak. Then the jacks that leveled the RV wouldn't retract. Robert offered to help, but his help made things worse. He moved in that jerky, wrong way, his hands fumbling with tools like he'd never used them before. "I've got it," Marcus finally said, frustrated. "Just sit down or something." It was almost noon by the time we were ready to leave. Marcus got in the driver's seat. Jennifer sat passenger side. The rest of us piled into the back. Marcus started the engine, put the RV in gear, and began driving toward the campground exit. We drove for about 5 minutes, then we were back at our campsite. "What the hell?" Marcus said. He tried again. We drove in the direction of the exit, following the gravel road. 5 minutes later, we were back at our campsite. "This doesn't make sense," Marcus said. He was gripping the steering wheel hard enough that his knuckles were white. "The exit is right there. We're driving straight toward it. How do we keep ending up back here?" "Same way we kept ending up back in that clearing," Shanice said quietly. Marcus tried a 3rd time. Same result. 4th time. 5th time. Every time, no matter how carefully he drove, no matter what speed or direction, we ended up back at our campsite after about 5 minutes of driving. "We're trapped," David said. "Just like yesterday, we're trapped here." "Don't be ridiculous," Marcus said, but his voice shook. "There's a logical explanation. Maybe the road loops or—" "The road doesn't loop," Jennifer said. She had her map out. "It's a straight line from here to the highway. There's no way we should keep ending up back here." Robert laughed. It was a terrible sound, high-pitched and wrong. "Maybe we're supposed to stay," he said, "but maybe they want us to stay." "Who?" I asked. "Who wants us to stay?" Robert's smile widened even more, impossibly wide. "The ones in the forest. The ones who are chanting. Don't you hear them?" We all fell silent. And yes, I could hear it. Faintly, underneath everything else. The chanting. That same rhythmic pattern. It had been there all along, I realized, since last night. Since we came back from the forest. It had never stopped. "I don't hear anything," Marcus said. "You do," Robert said. "You just don't want to admit it." Marcus tried driving out 2 more times. Same result. On the 7th attempt, he just sat there behind the wheel, breathing hard, not moving. "We're going to run out of gas eventually," Jennifer said. "We can't just keep doing this." "Then what do you suggest?" Marcus snapped. "I don't know," Jennifer said, "but this isn't working." David was crying quietly in the back. Shanice had her eyes closed, hands pressed against her ears like she was trying to block out sound. Robert sat perfectly still, that smile on his face, watching all of us. I got up and walked to the door. "I'm going outside." "Kelly, don't—" Shanice started, but I was already opening the door. I stepped out of the RV into the afternoon sunlight. It was a beautiful day, actually. Clear sky, cool temperature, birds singing in the trees. I walked toward the fire ring and sat down in one of the folding chairs. Behind me, I could hear arguing from inside the RV. Marcus and Jennifer mostly. David crying. Shanice trying to calm everyone down. I sat there and listened to the chanting. It was clearer out here. I could almost make out individual voices, though still not words. I found myself paying attention to the rhythm. It had a pattern, a structure. It repeated every 45 seconds or so, the same sequence of sounds. After a while, I realized I was humming along with it, matching the pattern. My throat moved and sounds came out and they fit perfectly with what I was hearing. The RV door opened. Shanice came out. "Kelly, are you okay?" I stopped humming. "I'm fine." You were making that sound, that chanting sound." "Was I?" I honestly hadn't realized. "Sorry." She sat down in the other chair. "What are we going to do?" "I don't know. Robert's not Robert anymore. You know that, right?" "I know. And we can't leave." "I know that too." We sat in silence for a while. The argument in the RV had died down. I wondered what they were discussing, whether it mattered. "What did we see last night?" Shanice asked. "In the forest, what was that?" "I don't know. But you have a theory." I did, though I didn't want to say it out loud. "I think we saw something we weren't supposed to see, and now they won't let us leave until what?" "I don't know. Until we're like Robert, maybe. Until we become part of it." Shanice shuddered. "That's insane. This whole thing is insane. These things don't happen, they can't happen." But they were happening. That was the problem. We could deny it all we wanted, but we were still trapped here, and Robert was still wrong, and the chanting was still going on, and none of the normal rules seemed to apply anymore. Marcus came out of the RV. "I'm going to walk to the highway," he announced. "It's only a few miles. I can walk it, get to a phone, call for help." "Marcus, we tried walking yesterday," I said. "We just ended up going in circles." "That was in the forest. This is different. I'll follow the road. Roads don't loop back on themselves." "The road in the RV did." "That's different. I wasn't paying attention. I'll pay better attention walking." He didn't wait for us to argue. He just started walking down the gravel road toward where the exit should be. We watched him go. He made it about 100 yards before he turned a slight curve in the road and disappeared from view. We waited. 10 minutes passed. 15. Then Marcus came walking back into the campsite from the opposite direction, from the forest behind us. "That's not possible," he said. His voice was shaking. "I walked in a straight line. I didn't turn around. I watched my feet the whole time. I went straight. I couldn't have turned around." "You came from behind us," Shanice said. "From the forest." "I know," Marcus shouted. "I know I did. But that's not where I went. I went down the road." David and Jennifer had come out of the RV now. We all stood there watching Marcus pace and rant. Robert appeared in the RV doorway, still smiling that wrong smile, just watching. "This is insane," Marcus said. "This is absolutely insane. There has to be an explanation. There has to be a logical—" He stopped. We all heard it. The chanting was getting louder, much louder, and it was coming closer. "Back in the RV," Jennifer said. "Now. Everyone back in the RV." We all moved except Robert, who just stood in the doorway blocking it. "They're coming," he said pleasantly. "Finally. They've been waiting for us." "Robert, move," Marcus said. "Why? We should greet them. They're our friends now." Marcus tried to push past him, but Robert was surprisingly strong. He grabbed Marcus's arm, still smiling, and Marcus yelped in pain. "Jesus Christ, Robert, let go." "We should stay and greet them," Robert repeated. Shanice and I pushed past both of them, squeezing into the RV. David and Jennifer followed. Marcus was still struggling with Robert. Finally, he wrenched his arm free and stumbled inside. We tried to close the door, but Robert blocked it with his foot. "Robert, please," Jennifer said. "Come inside, close the door." "But they're coming," Robert said. "Listen, they're almost here." The chanting was very loud now. I could see movement at the edge of the forest, figures emerging from between the trees. The same people we'd seen last night circling the fire. 20 of them, maybe more. They walked in formation, still chanting, heading directly for our campsite. Robert stepped aside and they came closer. Some of them were old, some young, some children. All of them wore dark, old-fashioned clothing, and all of them had that same blank expression, those same hollow eyes. Marcus finally managed to pull the door closed and lock it. We crowded around the windows, watching. The figures formed a circle around the RV. They stood perfectly still, perfectly silent now. just watching us. What do they want? David whispered. Nobody answered. We didn't know. One of the figures stepped forward, an old woman, maybe 70 or 80, with long gray hair. She came right up to the RV's door and pressed her hand against it. The door rattled. Once, twice, 3 times. Then she spoke. Her voice was clear and strong despite her age. You saw the ritual. You witnessed what should not be witnessed. Now you are part of it. Now you belong to this place. We didn't mean to, Marcus started, but the woman continued. It doesn't matter what you meant, you saw. And seeing binds you. 3 of you must join us. 3 must take part in the next ritual. Or all of you stay forever. That's not, we don't, what are you talking about? Marcus said. But the woman had already stepped back. The circle of figures remained. They stood there, unmoving, for maybe an hour. We stayed inside the RV, not daring to go out, hardly daring to move. Robert had settled into his sleeping bag and was lying there with his eyes open, staring at the ceiling, smiling. Eventually, as the sun began to set, the figures turned and walked back into the forest. They didn't break formation. They moved as one unit, silent now, disappearing between the trees. They're gone, Jennifer said. For now, I said. We tried the engine again. Marcus turned the key. The RV started, he put it in gear and began to drive. 5 minutes later, we were back at the campsite. 3 of us, Shanice said quietly. She said 3 of us have to join them. Absolutely not, Marcus said. We're not doing whatever sick cult thing they want us to do. We're getting out of here. How? Jennifer asked. We've tried everything. We can't drive out. We can't walk out. We're trapped. There has to be a way. We just haven't found it yet. But I was starting to think Marcus was wrong. I was starting to think there wasn't a way out. Not a way that didn't involve doing what they wanted. We spent another night in the RV. None of us slept. Marcus tried the engine periodically throughout the night. Same result every time. Back at the campsite. The sun rose on our 3rd full day trapped there. Our water supply was running low. We had maybe a day's worth of food left if we rationed it carefully. Around mid-morning, David said he had to use the bathroom. The RV's toilet had stopped working. The tank was full and Marcus couldn't figure out how to empty it. So David had to walk to the bathroom building. He took a flashlight even though it was daylight. He didn't come back. We waited an hour, then 2. Finally, Marcus and I went to look for him. The bathroom was empty, no sign of David. We called his name, searched the area around it. Nothing. The forest, Marcus said. They took him into the forest. We went back to the RV and told the others. Jennifer started crying. Shanice just nodded like she'd expected this. Robert rolled over in his sleeping bag. 1 down, he said. 2 to go. Shut up, Robert, Marcus snapped. I'm just saying what we all know. They need 3. David makes 1. They need 2 more. Nobody else is going, Marcus said. But we all knew it was a lie. We were running out of food, out of water. We couldn't leave. Eventually, we'd have no choice. Or they'd come and take us. Either way, 3 of us were going to join them. That night, the chanting started again. Louder than before. Closer. The figures appeared at the edge of the forest, forming their circle around the RV. The old woman came forward again. You have given us 1, she said. We require 2 more. Choose, or we will choose for you. We're not choosing, Marcus said through the door. You can't make us. The old woman smiled. It was the same wrong smile Robert had. We can wait. This place is ours. You will join us eventually. Tonight, tomorrow, the next day. It makes no difference to us. We have all the time there is. She retreated. The circle remained. They stood there all night, silent now, just watching. We huddled in the RV, exhausted and terrified. Robert lay in his sleeping bag, smiling at the ceiling. Around 3 in the morning, he spoke. I can hear them, he said. They're singing. It's beautiful. Why can't you hear it? Robert, please stop talking, Jennifer said. But it is beautiful. And when you really hear it, you'll understand. You'll want to join them. You'll want to be part of it. He sat up, still smiling. I could go out there right now, walk right into their circle. They'd welcome me. I'd be complete. Then go, Marcus said harshly. If you want to be with them so badly, go. Robert looked at him, that smile never wavering. I can't. Not yet. I'm not fully ready. But soon I will be. And you will be too. All of you. I couldn't take it anymore. I got up, grabbed one of the flashlights, and went to the RV door. Kelly, don't, Shanice said. I need air. I can't stay in here. They're out there. I know. I opened the door and stepped out. The circle of figures remained, but they didn't move toward me, they just watched. The old woman stood among them, her hollow eyes fixed on me. I walked past them toward the bathroom building, half expecting them to grab me, to drag me into the forest. But they didn't. They let me go. I reached the bathroom and went inside. The light flickered. I stood at the sink and splashed water on my face. In the mirror, I looked terrible. Dark circles under my eyes, skin pale, hair matted. I stared at my reflection. And then, very faintly, I heard it. The chanting. It was coming from inside my head, not from outside. From inside. Like it had always been there, and I was only just now noticing it. The rhythm, the pattern, the sounds that weren't words. I understood them now, not the meaning, but the purpose. They were calling. They were inviting. They were promising something. Completion, maybe. Or just an end to the fear. I stood there for a long time, listening to the chanting in my head, watching my reflection. When I finally went back outside, the circle had grown larger. There were more figures now. Dozens of them. And standing among them, wearing that same blank expression, those same hollow eyes, was David. He saw me and smiled, the wrong smile. Kelly, he said, you understand now, don't you? You can hear them. David, what did they do to you? They made me complete. They showed me the truth. And you'll see it too. You'll all see it. I backed away, retreating to the RV. The figures didn't follow, didn't move. They just stood there waiting. David among them now, one of them lost to whatever had taken Robert. I got back inside and locked the door. Shanice, Marcus, and Jennifer were all awake. I told them about David. Jennifer started crying harder. Marcus punched the wall, leaving a dent in the RV's interior. This can't be happening, he said. This can't be real. But it was real. We all knew it was real. The next morning, our fourth day, Robert was gone. We woke up and his sleeping bag was empty. The RV door was unlocked from the inside. He'd left during the night while we slept, walking out to join the others. We didn't go looking for him. We knew where he was. That left 4 of us. Marcus, Jennifer, Shanice, and me. 4 people trapped in an RV, surrounded by figures who wanted 3 of us to join them. The math was simple and terrible. 3 would go, 1 might stay, or maybe all of us would go eventually. Maybe there was no real choice at all. We were almost out of food. We had maybe half a day's worth of water left. Marcus was talking about rationing, about making it last. But what was the point? We couldn't leave. We couldn't call for help. We were going to run out of supplies no matter how carefully we rationed. Around noon, Jennifer said she'd had enough. I'm going to do it, she announced. I'm going out there. I'm going to end this. Jennifer, no, Marcus started. We all know how this ends. They need 3 of us. Well, fine. I'll be one of them. At least then the rest of you might have a chance. We don't know that, Shanice said. We don't know if they'll really let anyone go. We don't know anything, Jennifer said. But I can't do this anymore. I can't sit here and wait and hope for rescue that isn't coming. I'm going. She stood up and walked to the door. Marcus grabbed her arm. Please, Jennifer, don't. We'll figure something out. We'll... Let go of me, Marcus. Jennifer, let go. He did. Jennifer opened the door and stepped out. The figures were there, forming their circle as they had been all day. The old woman stepped forward. You offer yourself? She asked. Yes, Jennifer said. I'll join you. I'll take part in your ritual. Just let the others go. That is not how it works. 3 must join. 3 must participate. That is the price for witnessing what you witnessed. Then let me be one of the 3. Take me now. The old woman studied her for a moment, then nodded. Very well. Come. Jennifer walked into the circle. The figures closed around her. I saw her face one more time before they led her into the forest, calm, resigned, almost relieved. Then she was gone, swallowed by the trees. 3 of us left now. Marcus, Shanice, and me. Marcus immediately tried the engine again. The RV started. He drove. 5 minutes later, we were back at the campsite. God damn it, he screamed. He kept screaming, pounding his fists on the steering wheel. God damn it, God damn it, God damn it. Shanice and I sat in the back and said nothing. What was there to say? That night, the chanting was inside my head constantly. I couldn't not hear it anymore. It had become part of my thoughts, woven through everything. I hummed along with it without meaning to. The rhythm felt natural now, like my own heartbeat. Shanice looked at me. Kelly, you're doing it again, the chanting. I know. You have to stop. I can't. It's always there now. Don't you hear it? I hear it from outside, but you sound like you're part of it. Maybe I was. Maybe that's what happened. You heard it long enough and it became part of you. You couldn't separate yourself from it anymore. Marcus was still at the steering wheel, just staring straight ahead. He'd been there for hours. Every so often he'd turn the key, drive the RV for a few minutes, end up back at the campsite and just sit there. He'd stopped swearing, stopped fighting. He was just hollow. Around midnight, Shanice whispered to me, "We have to run. We have to try to run." We tried. We end up back here. We have to try again. There has to be a way. There has to. Her voice broke. Kelly, I don't want to become like Robert, like David. I don't want that. Neither do I. So we run, tonight. We wait until they're not watching, and we run. It was a terrible plan, but it was the only plan we had. We waited until 2 in the morning. The figures were still there, but they seemed less attentive, less focused. Marcus had finally moved from the driver's seat and was lying on the couch staring at nothing. Shanice and I quietly opened the back door of the RV. There was a small emergency exit that we hadn't tried yet. We slipped out into the darkness. The figures didn't react immediately. We ran toward the forest, not the road this time, but perpendicular to it, in a direction we hadn't tried. We ran hard and fast, branches whipping at us, roots trying to trip us. Behind us I heard them coming, the chanting rising, pursuing us. We ran for what felt like hours. The forest never ended. Every direction looked the same. And the chanting followed us, growing louder and louder until it filled everything. Until Shanice stopped running and started screaming. I can't, Kelly, I can't. It's in my head, make it stop. I grabbed her shoulders. Keep running, we have to keep running. But she couldn't. She fell to her knees, hands pressed against her ears. It's too loud. It's too loud. I can hear what they're saying now. I understand it. Shanice, please. They're saying we belong with them. They're saying we're already part of it. We've been part of it since we saw the ritual. We just didn't know it yet. That's not true. But maybe it was. Maybe we'd been doomed since that first night, since we followed the chanting to the clearing and saw what we shouldn't have seen. Maybe there was never any escape. Maybe we'd just been fighting the inevitable. Shanice stood up. Her face had gone blank. Her eyes looked hollow. I understand now, she said. I need to go back. I need to complete it. Shanice, no. She walked past me, back the way we'd come. I followed her, calling her name, trying to make her stop. But she didn't stop. She walked straight back to the campsite, straight to the circle of figures and joined them. They welcomed her without a word. Just opened the circle, let her in, closed it behind her. I stood outside the circle alone now. The old woman approached me. You are the last, she said. You are the one who hears most clearly. You are the one who understands. Will you join us willingly, or must we take you? I looked back at the RV. Marcus was standing in the doorway watching. His face was blank now, too. Hollow eyes. Wrong smile. He'd joined them at some point while Shanice and I were running. Probably walked right out and offered himself up. I was alone, the only one left. If I join you, I said, will you let me go? After the ritual, will I be able to leave? The old woman smiled. After the ritual, you will not want to leave. None of them do. Look at them. I looked at the circle. Robert, David, Jennifer, Shanice, Marcus. All of them with that same blank expression. All of them lost to whatever this was. But they didn't look unhappy. They looked complete. Just like Robert had said. The ritual is tomorrow night, the old woman said. You may spend today as you wish, but when the sun sets, you will join us. You will complete the circle. You will become what you were always meant to become. She retreated back to the others. The circle dispersed, the figures melting back into the forest. I was left standing alone in the campsite, the RV behind me, the forest all around me. The chanting was still in my head. It hadn't stopped. It would never stop now. I spent that last day alone in the RV. I tried the engine one more time. Same result. I tried walking out. Same result. There was no escape. There had never been any escape. I sat in the RV and listened to the chanting in my head and waited for sunset. When the sun began to sink, I felt it. A pull. An inevitability. I got up and walked outside. The figures were there, forming their circle again. The bonfire was lit. When had that happened? I didn't know. The old woman stood at the edge of the circle, waiting for me. I walked toward her. I didn't have a choice anymore, or maybe I did, and I chose this. I couldn't tell the difference anymore. Welcome, she said. Welcome home. The circle opened. I stepped inside. The figures closed around me, and we began to move, counterclockwise around the fire. And we chanted. I chanted with them. The sounds that weren't words, but were something deeper than words, something older, something that had always been there, waiting for someone to hear it. We circled the fire. The chanting rose and fell. I understood it now. I understood what it meant. We were calling something. We were completing something. We were becoming something. The ritual went on for hours, maybe days. Time didn't mean anything anymore. There was only the circle, the fire, the chanting, and then it ended. The fire went out. The circle broke apart. I stood there and I felt different. Complete. Whole. Like I'd been missing something my entire life and had just now found it. The old woman approached me. You are one of us now. You are bound to this place as we all are. You will live here and you will serve the ritual. And when new ones come, those who see what they should not see, you will welcome them. You will guide them. You will help them become complete, as you are now complete. I nodded. I understood. I accepted it. But then something strange happened. The forest began to shimmer. The trees became translucent. The figures around me started to fade. I could see through them, see past them, see the campground, the real campground. Other RVs parked in other sites, families camping, kids playing, normal people doing normal things. And I was standing among them, visible, solid, real. The old woman and the others were fading away, becoming less substantial, less real. What? I started to say. You are the bridge now, the old woman said, her voice distant and faint. You are between worlds. You can see both. You belong to us, but you walk among them. You will draw more to us. You will be the lure. Then she was gone. All of them were gone. The bonfire, the circle, the chanting, all gone. I stood alone in the campsite. The RV was still there, but it looked different. Old and abandoned, like it had been there for years. When I walked to it and looked inside, there was no one. No Marcus, no Shanice, just emptiness and dust. I walked to the campground entrance. This time I didn't loop back. I walked right out onto the main road. Cars passed me. People in them glanced at me and looked away. I was just another hiker, another camper, nothing strange about me. Except I could still hear it. The chanting, it was still in my head, would always be in my head. And now when I looked at people, really looked at them, I could see who would hear it too. Who would be drawn to it. Who would come to the forest and witness the ritual and become part of it, just as I had. I walked to the nearest town. I got a ride from a trucker who didn't ask questions. I made it back to Salt Lake City, back to my apartment, back to my job. Marcus never came back. Neither did any of the others. The company sent investigators looking for them. The RV was found abandoned at the campground. There was speculation about what happened. Did they have an accident? Did they get lost in the forest? Did something terrible happen? I was the only one who returned, and I couldn't explain what happened. When they questioned me, I told them I'd left early, that I'd gotten sick and hitched a ride home, that the others had stayed. It was a lie, but they believed it. Or at least they couldn't prove it wasn't true. That was 3 weeks ago. I go to work every day. I do my job. I act normal. But the chanting is always there, underneath everything. And sometimes, late at night, I find myself humming it, matching the rhythm, becoming part of it again. And the worst part? Sometimes I see them. Robert, David, Jennifer, Marcus, Shanice. They're standing at the edge of my vision in crowds, in parking lots, in grocery stores. Always watching, always smiling that wrong smile. They're waiting for me to come back, waiting for me to return to the forest and take my place in the circle permanently. But I haven't gone back. Not yet. I tell myself I won't. I tell myself I'm free. Except I'm not free. I know that. Part of me is still there, will always be there, circling that fire, chanting those sounds. And the other part, the part that walks around this world, that goes to work and comes home and pretends everything is normal, that part is just waiting. Waiting for the call to become too strong to resist. Waiting for the day when I pack my things, get in my car and drive back to Fish Lake National Forest. Because that's what the old woman meant when she said I was the bridge. I exist in both worlds now. I can leave the forest, but the forest never leaves me. And everyone I meet, everyone I interact with, I'm evaluating them, wondering if they can hear it too, wondering if they'd be drawn to it, wondering if I should tell them about the campground, about the ritual, about the completion that waits for them there. I haven't yet. I've resisted that urge, but the chanting is getting louder. Every day, it's a little bit louder. And one day soon, I know I won't be able to resist anymore. I'll start talking about the forest, about the campground, about the beautiful, isolated spot where strange things happen and people find completion. I'll talk about it casually, like a recommendation, like I'm just suggesting a nice weekend getaway. And someone will listen. Someone always listens. Someone will go to that campground, and they'll hear the chanting, and they'll follow it into the forest. And they'll see the ritual, and they'll become part of it, and the circle will grow. That's my purpose now. That's what I am. The lure, the bridge, the one who draws others in. My name is Kelly Anderson. I'm 34 years old. I work in accounts receivable for a mid-sized insurance company in Salt Lake City. And 3 weeks ago, I went on a camping trip that changed everything. The chanting never stops. Even now, as I write this, I can hear it. And I know that soon, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, maybe next month, I'll stop resisting. I'll accept what I am. I'll return to the forest and take my place in the circle permanently. Or maybe I'll stay here, in this world, drawing others to it. Being the bridge between the normal and the complete. I don't know which is worse. But I do know this. If you're reading this, and you feel drawn to Fish Lake National Forest, to 7 Mile Campsite, to the sound of chanting in the woods, don't go. Don't follow it. Don't let yourself see what I saw. Because once you see it, you belong to it. And there's no coming back from that. Not really. Not ever. The chanting continues. It always will. And I'm listening.